All right, I think we're ready to get started. Welcome everyone, and we're so happy to have you joining us today for today's webinar. We're so excited to dive into storytelling and the huge impact it can have on building a more positive employer brand. So let's quickly chat through what we're going to cover today. Here's a look at our agenda. We're first going to talk through really why employer branding is so critical to your recruiting strategy and some of the market trends we're facing today. Second, we'll talk through how to curate compelling stories from your employees. Next, how to really bring those stories to life once you gather them across a mix of your owned properties as well as external candidate tools and review sites. We'll then turn it over to our special guest, Molly, who's going to share some best practices from the field as her role as an employee engagement manager. And we'll also have a section dedicated to live questions and answers. I was really excited. So many of you have already shared great questions as we were going through the webinar registration process that we'll be including as well. I think there was over 40 questions that already came through, but we'll also be taking live Q&A. As those come through, you're welcome to use the Q&A box that's listed at the bottom of the Zoom tool. So feel free to add those along the way. We'll be answering those in the order that they're received. And if you have any immediate questions, feel free to lean on the chat box. One of the hosts or presenters will try to answer those questions along the way. Otherwise, we will keep the phone lines muted through the presentation. We're also featuring a branded hashtag, Best Brand Forward. You'll see that at the bottom of the slides. If anything strikes you as really exciting or inspirational, feel free to keep the conversation going on Twitter or your favorite social media platform with that hashtag. And lastly, like I mentioned before, we've pasted some really awesome resources into the chat window for you to dig into after the event. The first is a new ebook and a big series we've just released at Blueboard that's a really practical guide for building employer brand through shareable recognition efforts. And the second link is hot off the press from the Muse team. It's a new ebook that's all about crafting compelling stories. So welcome you to check those out. So let's go ahead and introduce our speakers. We're happy to welcome Molly Trucano, who's the Manager of Employee Engagement and Internal Marketing at Truex. And for those of you guys who don't know about Truex, you've probably seen it in action anytime you've been watching TV episodes online and having the opportunity to shorten your commercial break by interacting with 30 or 60-second brand experiences. Truex is actually powering that. They're a division of 21st Century Fox, and they're all about building interactive advertisements through an ad tech platform for premium publishers, showing content across the digital space, whether it's online TV episode viewing, interactive video gaming, or social gaming. Welcome, Molly. Next, we have Heather Freiser, who is with the Muse. She's the Vice President of Branded Content there. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the Muse, it's a big career platform supporting over 75 million people who are looking to craft meaningful careers through their platform, themuse.com, and their employer partners. Smart companies work with the Muse to attract today's top talent, giving candidates the information they need to find the company that's right for them. And that's all because life is way too short to hate your career. And lastly, I'm Morgan. I'm a head of marketing here at Blueboard. For those of you who are new to Blueboard, we're an experiential recognition and rewards platform for the modern workplace. We partner with top companies to reward employees with their choice of an experience. Bucket list trips with their family, things that are more localized, like taking a kayaking trip or going skydiving for the first time, all in lieu of other rewards like cash or gift cards. So before we jump in, I wanted to take a quick pulse from you guys. I'm going to launch a poll on the screen. You'll see that running now. We'd love to know just quickly, how much time are you spending thinking about employer branding when you think about your role as a whole? So how much time are you generally dedicating to it, and kind of where does it fall on your radar? We'll let that run for just a few seconds. Cool, seeing a lot of you guys saying it's always on my mind, which is great, but it looks like the majority of the group is falling into like 25 to 15% of your time is really dedicated to that. really helpful. This lets us know that this is definitely a topic that's on everyone's minds, but maybe not something that's core to your role. So there'll be lots of opportunities to learn along the way as we go through the content. All right, so let's jump in. We're going to first start by talking about a landscape of the talent recruiting market, because let's be honest, as most of us are familiar, the struggle is very real. So we're currently in a candidate-driven market, which means it's incredibly hard to find and recruit the best people to your company. We're seeing, at least, it might be a little bit comforting to know that you're not alone. 73% of companies have claimed that they're struggling to find the right candidate. So at least there's misery in company, right? And then on top of that, the top candidates are really barely on the market. They're spending about 10 days actively looking before they are getting their first job offer. So you've got to move very quickly to catch the ones that are most important to you. And then in more recent news, I saw this stat come through a few weeks ago from the US Labor Department. Crazy thing is that the job market is so hot, we're now facing a labor shortage. For the first time on record, the number of job openings are set to surpass the number of unemployed workers. So we'll have more jobs open than we can possibly fill. And that means that your talent pool is no longer made up of active candidates, but what you're going to have to start doing is really seeking out the passive ones that you can hopefully convince to leave their current role or project to join your team, making that a much harder task at hand. So how can you compete for those top people knowing that the talent pool is so incredibly scarce? Another trend we've been following is linked to reputation, which is really your employer brand. And that's why we're all here today, is to dig into that deeper. Reputation and employer brand continue to play a huge role in the candidate's experience. We're seeing 92% of job seekers relying on employee reviews and ratings to guide their search, which is basically your entire talent pool. But here's the scary part. All of this research is going on completely behind your back. The candidates have more tools than ever to form their own opinions about their company before ever talking to your live recruiters. And your reputation is carrying a much heavier weight in their decision-making. We're seeing 1 in 2 candidates use review sites like Indeed, the Muse, or Glassdoor to vet your company. And 1 in 3 of them will drop you if you don't have at least 3 stars. And lastly, what about as you get further down the funnel, people who are ready to take a job? Nearly half of them, especially prominent and managerial level candidates, the ones that are incredibly expensive to recruit, those ones, will straight up turn down offers based on reviews alone. And we're seeing that trend grow even stronger with millennials who are now really going after more manager roles as they're maturing in the workforce. So that's a little bit scary to know that people will straight up decline you if your reviews are not in the positive direction. Erie Media calls this the Yelpification of the candidate experience. I ran into that in a blog post as I was prepping for the webinar, and I loved it and had to use it here. So in the same way, we as consumers don't care nearly as much about what a company says about its products and services compared to what the customers are actually saying. And I think we're all guilty of this if you think back to times when even vetting restaurants, hair salons, or even healthcare providers, job seekers similarly could not care less about your careers page or job postings page when compared to the voice and online reviews from your current and former employees. So what does this mean for your hiring process? It means that we need to find a new way to fish. We've learned now that the talent pool is increasingly scarce, and it's a hotter market now than ever before. We need to get in front of candidates as soon as they start their search, or maybe even before they start, as we're thinking now about attacking passive candidates on external sites that they already frequent. We need to put our best brand forward. And that means that your employees need to have your back. So it's your job as an HR leader to foster and showcase real, authentic brand stories and provide initiatives to foster creation of that content to make your employer branding dream into a reality. So before we get started, before we move forward, I want to launch one more poll for us. You'll see this on screen now. Feel free to take a vote. What I wanted to do before I pass it over to Heather, who's going to really dive into really curating and those compelling stories, is learn if you guys already have a process in place and the tools to share brand stories at your company. We'll let this run for a few seconds. It looks like the majority of us are in progress, which means that you're currently exploring opportunities or you're in progress of building that internal process based on the tool that you adopted. So that's awesome. It means that we're at a really great place to share some tips. So I'll go ahead and close out the poll now and share those results with you. Perfect. All right, so at this point, I'm gonna pass it over to Heather. She's gonna chat through tips for curating amazing branded content from your top employees. Feel free to take it away, Heather.
Great, thanks so much. So as Morgan mentioned, you are the stories you tell, or you are the ones that people tell about you. And so I think it's really important to build your own brand story, and you can and should do that. And storytelling is something that we're all familiar with from the beginning of time, right? We were made to consume stories, from ancient folklore to modern day books and films. Storytelling has entertained us, it's taught us, it's helped shape who we are. And stories connect and engage, and they can't be untold. So they go beyond just providing answers. They go beyond just providing statistics, but they expose real authentic truths, which is something that the Muse has been built on, which is telling those authentic employer stories. They also gives us path to connection with people. And with so much noise out there, I think the stat is, that, out of the 5% of content makes up 95% of the total content engagement. And there are so many resources available that Morgan outlined. Stories can be your saving grace for standing out in what is a very competitive job market. And there are a few reasons why they're really so valuable. The first is that they evoke empathy. So there's some interesting science here, but when people are exposed to character-driven stories, AKA brand personality, your body has a physical reaction. It releases oxytocin, which is the hormone that's linked to empathy. It makes us more sensitive to social cues around us, which then motivate us to engage to help others. And for a job seeker, that means they're more open to your company and they're more inclined to lean in, learn more, and remember your company offerings. Second, they're engaging. So they share facts, but they also give creative license to the recipient to form their own insights about you. So additionally, a captivating and intriguing stories have the ability to open up an authentic dialogue with job seekers. Think about a great movie you saw. Think about a great scene from a television show that you'll never forget. Stories that you tell on an employer brand scale help employees remember you. And then the job seeker can then form their own opinions around the offering based on the story shared, and then they can reach out to learn more about you. The third thing that's probably the most important, which I've hit on a little bit, is that they're sticky. So you remember the last vacation you took? It might be that your mind surfaces one of your favorite moments from that trip, one of your favorite stories from that trip. Visuals, whether created by a job seeker when reading compelling content or leveraged from photo and video assets, stick around in the right side of our brain, our creative center, for an incredibly long time. So a story is 22 times more memorable than facts alone, according to Stanford research. And I do want to preface this with, of course, content marketing, it's more complicated than just telling stories. So you need to create content that's going to educate and inspire your audience. You need a smart distribution strategy, and you need ways to consistently optimize that story that you tell. But if you don't have the great stories, you will fail at recruiting, especially in this competitive market, because making someone feel something goes a very long way and inspires them to act. And going along here, the next thing to kind of highlight here is there are certain moments that are really critical for employee storytelling. And there are certain times where you can really capture someone's attention. And I'm gonna talk through 3 different instances. The first is new hire onboarding. So a new employee's first day, that 30, 60, 90 days of the company, they're full of energy, they're full of positivity, exciting moments and emotion. They're getting used to their physical environment. And I always like to think that a fresh perspective on a company comes from a new employee, right? Things about your culture that you might have never known come from those people who are observing it as someone who's just experiencing it. So capturing stories from employees after their first day or their first week on the job, encouraging them to share their new employee headshot, pictures from their desk, selfies with teammates, those things are much more likely to happen and be shared within that first initial excitement phase within a company. It's a really great early win, and it's also a great way to celebrate your new hires that you have coming in. And the next one, speaking of celebrations, is company celebrations are another really great way to tell some of those stories that you want to tell. So the first is, if you have a monthly team event or a happy hour, big fundraising, volunteer work, lunches, milestones, capturing those celebrations with blog posts or photos or videos can show a really positive company culture that's really focused on not just business results, but also on building relationships. And I would encourage you to have your employees share that content with a company branded hashtag. So here we have Muse Life, so that friends and family of your employees can follow along and job seekers can catch up on that full story as well. So an example for that would be at Blueboard. You can follow Blueboarding on Instagram, and they have a mix of company-led events and celebrations. Again, here we have Muse Life that gives a lot of behind the scenes looks at some of the things we have going on here. Again, that kind of taste of real life that's more than just the corporate speak that they might initially find on your employer brand website is really, really compelling. The last moment is growth and recognition. So spotlighting your top performers and overachievers to serve as a model for what success looks like is really key. And I think encouraging employees to celebrate that themselves as they move up in their career, receive a promotion or a transfer to a new team, creates this space where employees can celebrate personal victories when they're recognized for a job well done, and also sets that example for prospective employees that you celebrate wins and you celebrate top performers and growth. So those are all kind of key moments where I would say it really sticks out more. And just kind of moving on to some of the examples here, but there are a lot of different ways to incentivize employees. And I think, people like cash, they like gift cards, obviously, but they're uncomfortable to brag about those things on social media. But when you give someone an experiential reward, like those offered at Blueboard, if it's family time at a Broadway show, cooking dim sum, we like to go out to a Muse retreat, we do baseball games here. Those things are really great to be captured on social media. So the more that you can think about the experience that can make for a good story, the more content you're likely to have your employees share. And then as an HR leader, you can repurpose and showcase recognition stories on the website, on company profiles, or internally during events, right? Company all hands meetings, recognition stories, like I mentioned before. But this kind of also shows that the leadership team is really focused on building a culture of appreciation. The idea that you do give back to your employees, the idea that you celebrate success. All of these things can be displayed with really great photos, videos, and blog posts. So now that we know a little bit about the value of storytelling within the employer brand space and when moments can be curated, it's really up to you to put those assets to work. So I'm going to dig into how you can kind of bring some of those compelling brand stories to life across your own sites, as well as popular review sites like the Muse. So moving on, there are several different places where you can kind of curate and publish this content. And I think first it's the sites that are in control, right? Your company about us page, your job listings page, company profiles on sites like the Muse and others. When you look at the importance of encouraging employees to share, extending that reach beyond just your own owned channels, but things like your social media networks, building a solid network there. And then the third is kind of these review and rating sites, right? You can control the story on sites like Glassdoor and any of the other review sites. by shaping that narrative with content you've created yourself. It's a big part of our, our mission here is to help employees do that in a way that is authentic and positive, and makes people see what a great company you are. We also have a platform called Brand Builder, which encourages and engages employees to tell their own stories. And this is kind of the idea of having your employees create their own content with purpose behind it. So not just leaving it to employees to create, to share out whatever they want, but the idea is for you to understand that messaging. So going a little bit further into Brand Builder itself, it is a tool that we have that is employed by the employer, sent out to all of your employees, and allows them to curate their own career stories. What they get from it is something that they can share on their own channels. What our employer partners get from it is real authentic stories and a better understanding of your culture points, your value prop, and the things that your employees value, so that if you realize that half of your employees are really into cooking, maybe your next experiential event is a cooking class. And that might make them much more likely to share. So I'll give you a personal example. We did Brand Builder here at the Muse. And one of the things that came out from my own Brand Builder is that I am a mom of 3 really cute but crazy children. And one of the things that I talked about a lot was the idea that I really valued that the Muse gave me balance. They provide a lot of resources for new mothers. I have a more flexible schedule than I may have had in previous jobs. And from those results, our editorial team said, great, let's interview you on a story about what it's like to be a working mom and your career journey. And so when you look at some of the tools that you have here, this is a really subtle way and a real personal way to say the Muse has really great policies for working moms. And so there are additional value props for your own employer brands that you could do by discovering them through employee stories. So beyond internal promotion, it's really important to have a plan for external promotion and development of your employer brand. Your content is only so good as where it goes. And that's where employee advocacy comes in. So helping and motivating your employees to become strong champions of your culture and brand. So the first is social media. There's power in branded hashtags, tagging employees and encouraging them to share with their own communities. Thinking about employees who do have followings as employees to source for content and as storytellers. And then suggesting posts like hot job listings, company news, or brand videos. Make it easy for employees to share. Give them the copy and the resources to do so. And if they are advocates of the brand, they will. The other is sharing incentives. So you can motivate employees to share through contests or incentives. So I'm not sure if you remember the story of Flat Stanley, but it was that paper cutout. It came kind of viral in the 90s and people snapped photos of him on their travels. If you have kids now, they might still be doing it in school. And as a way to unite employees in healthy work-life balance, the company Glaukos created their own version called Flat Tom. It was modeled after their CEO. And employees were encouraged to take photos with Flat Tom as they went on their own life adventures, celebrated moments, and they were then featured on a dedicated Instagram that the company created called Flat Tom's Adventure. And each year, the best photo wins a Blueboard Ruby Award, which is the same reward given to employees on their 10-year anniversary. So like, it's kind of a big deal. And it's motivation for participating in the program and sharing their stories with Flat Tom. So it's a really kind of fun way. It's also on their Muse profile page. So if you want to check that out there and hear more about it. But the idea here is you can think outside the box and give employees really fun ways to share content about you. The last is discussing how leadership can drive engagement and help keeping advocacy at the top of mind. Leadership is crucial here. So they help advocacy become a priority and more authentically woven into your culture. We talk about this when it comes from Brand Builder, right? When we send out Brand Builder servers, we encourage our leadership to do them first, to share them and provide the value in sharing those stories. And so much so that way, getting your leadership on board to really celebrate wins, to share stories, and to encourage employees to do the same is really important. And with that, I'm going to take it over to Molly.
Thanks, everyone. Hi, everyone. It's so great to be here. As Morgan mentioned earlier, I'm Molly, and I run internal marketing and employee engagement at Truex, a 21st Century Fox company. Our whole mission at Truex is that we want advertising to be effective, meaning that the right person sees the right ad at the right time. We believe that ads should be engaging rather than interruptive. And as such, core to our external message is this idea that we've been talking about today about brand storytelling. Every corner and dimension of your brand should shine through. Brands are more than a name, logo, and something to sell. They're a connection made between consumers, products, and ultimately attention. Because we at Truex focus so much on this idea of brand storytelling externally, it only makes sense that we focus on brand storytelling internally as well with our employer branding initiatives. Culture isn't something that's built from the top down or the bottom up, and it's not just the job of HR, marketing, or senior leadership. It's built from the experiences, behaviors, and contributions of every team member and every facet of the employment experience. Truex has always benefited from a, quote, great culture, but we didn't really have the formula and definitions as to what that actually meant. In order to give our employees a chance to tell us their stories about what was and wasn't working, a few years ago, we decided to partner with the survey platform Culture Amp by giving our employees a confidential survey where their individual responses are absolutely not identifiable by anybody who works at Truex. We can diagnose what opportunities we had for increasing employee engagement and what speaks to employees to make them the happiest. From there, we knew we would have the honest opinions of where we should start by codifying and solidifying our employer brand and truly defining what it meant that people kept saying we had a great culture. Now, we've given an engagement survey every year for the past 3 years, and it guides a lot of what we do from an employer branding perspective. And just by giving a survey each year, we feel we are increasing our company's employer brand pedigree by giving our employees the opportunity to tell their stories candidly to help improve the place that they work. We use the results from our Culture Amp surveys on an annual basis to ensure that we, the HR, marketing, and admin teams, are providing the right tools and resources to start laying the groundwork for our culture so that the rest of the company can continue. People love our strong social culture, the strong collaborative and inclusive culture we have, and the strong work-life balance the workplace provides. The social culture of Truex informs a lot about how we operate as a company. Last week, we went to a local brewery here in LA. People regularly leave on their lunch breaks to go to the gym together. We have a fire pit in the office where we make s'mores in the wintertime. And we regularly attend museums and do other activities together as a team to gain different perspectives and use different parts of our brains. Using time away from our desks to create better, more collaborative work at our desk is huge in the stories that we tell our potential recruits, our colleagues at our parent company, and our communities outside the office. Our employer brand also benefits from creating diverse, collaborative, and cross-functional teams for our projects and initiatives. This can be seen in our team video for Uplift on our profile on the Muse. Now, we were limited to 4 interviewees, but this project was truly a team effort from ideation through to launch, involving almost every single employee at the company. Not one group took precedence over another. It's only a 2-minute video, but it could have easily been 15 minutes. And hearing from each of the employees, the individual perspective was really fascinating because I don't directly touch the process of creating a new product. In 2016, a colleague and I spent almost half a year putting together a 2.5-minute video that attempts to encapsulate everything that's great about working here. Of course, I say attempt because I know that a video can't actually do justice of the actual employment experience. But we feel a video of this nature gets really close to the why of working at our company. If you have the resources to devote to something like this, I highly recommend a video of this nature. We've been able to use it at recruiting fairs and at client events and on the landing page of our website. And it really gives an opportunity for those featured in the video to tell their brand story externally as well. And something that's coming down the pike for me is utilizing the platforms that we already have available to showcase recognition stories. And something that I'm working on with the team at Blueboard is using their platform to tell employee stories of awards they've redeemed with their concierge service. Now, this is very much a work in progress, but I'm really looking forward to giving our employees another way to tell their stories and experiences about working for Truex. We brought on Blueboard as a partner a couple years ago when we wanted an individualized way to give our employees good recognition beyond what they'd receive by a gift card or something less public. And I actually found out about Blueboard from a webinar such as this a couple years ago, so it comes full circle. So far, our employees have used Blueboard awards to do smaller, relaxation-focused activities like massages or sensory deprivation tanks or wine tastings, or more large, more involved events like ski lift tickets, family vacations, and helicopter tours. The team at Blueboard actually recently approached us with a new feature in their product called Recognition Stories, and that's helping us redefine and reshape the way we use Blueboard going forward. If an employee is performing at their job in a really incredible way, we want to reward them for it accurately and give them the space to talk about it afterwards. Once we have these stories told and curated, we plan to socialize using our existing social media channels like Facebook, LinkedIn, but also on our profile on the Muse. My last recommendation is to get creative and use all of the resources you have available to you and to look for stories in perhaps unexpected places. We have an employee newsletter that goes out to the whole company at the end of every month, and we have all of our new employees build a welcome deck where they tell us a little bit about themselves in a visual format. This really helps get new employees acclimated to the team by giving them the space to tell a story about themselves and their work history and how excited they are to be a new team member. We also have a submission for any employee to talk about anything they like within the newsletter. It could be a personal update or a professional update, changes to office policies and procedures. Anything that we feel could increase collaboration and communication fits nicely inside this monthly newsletter. Another colleague has opened up our company blog to employees who are not necessarily on the leadership and marketing teams. She will coach the employee and help them write a compelling piece for the blog. This way, the employee gets the chance to write about something that they are passionate about, and they get a byline and a sense of pride for being on the company blog. And we use Medium as our platform for that, if that interests you. We also give people the opportunity for them to present on a topic they're passionate about with regular lunch and learns about topics that could be work-related or not work-related. We feel that doing this can help increase confidence and knowledge sharing at any level of the company. When you're presenting on something that you really know a lot about and you care about to a room of friendly faces or to a Zoom room of friendly ears, it's really easy to feel confident in your presentation skills. Since we are a branch of a large company like 21st Century Fox, we also combine our own efforts at Truex with the efforts of the team over at Fox. Through our parent company, we are offered many perks and benefits that our employees love and they absolutely love talking about, like movie screenings, special events about things like career development or the production of TV shows and movies, special historical tours of the Fox lot, and also joining affinity groups like Fox Pride, OLA at Fox, which is the group for Latinx professionals, groups like Women of Fox Sports, and groups for many other identities that help us at Truex stay connected to our larger parent company. We also use our social media as a great way of telling employee stories. We can use our existing channels like LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook to highlight employee happenings and goings on, and we even open it up to the experiences told from the employees themselves. Lastly, we also have an employees-only Facebook group that we share where we're up to across all of our offices. On my next slide, I have picked some photos from that group to showcase what we're all about. The first photo is from LA Pride just a few weeks ago, where a group of us marched in the Pride Parade. The one right next to it is from a Soul Cycle team outing. The next to it is a picnic in Millennium Park with our Chicago team, welcoming a new team member. And lastly, there is a picture in the bottom left corner of meat filling up a grill, which is not a mistake. It's actually from a team barbecue that our engineers put on last week here in LA. So something that's really core to us is encouraging our employees to be open and vocal about their work life. It's really invaluable for us, and we try and showcase as many stories throughout as many mediums as possible, which really shows why Truex is a great place to work. Thank you, everyone. And I think we're going to open it up for question and answer now.
Yes, Molly, thank you so much. Those were awesome tips and tricks. Really appreciate you sharing. So yeah, the lines are open for Q&A. If you haven't already, feel free to submit your questions and we'll be covering those in the order that they were received. But as we're kind of warming that up, like I mentioned before, we did receive a really overwhelming amount of questions and just thought starters as people were engaging with the registration confirmation email. So thank you guys. I know this topic is very on trend and very top of mind for many of you, which is probably why we got so many submissions, which is great. So the first one I'm going to cover through came from Sherry. I don't know if she's on the email or on the webinar now, but she's from Neovio Logistics. She had a really great question about, so their company is a very sizable but distributed and non-wired workforce. So she's really curious to hear thoughts and ideas about how to engage their employees, knowing that not everybody is online and might have access to digital content at their fingertips. Thank you for that great question, Sherry. I wanted to share a little bit of how one of our clients, who's a very large insurance company, also not super tech focused, if you will, and they have offices all across the country. They're one of our customers here at Blueboard, and they give out rewards for an annual kind of performance spot recognition program. And as people go out and about on their experiences, they're sharing photos back with their HR administrator. And they've done a really amazing job of taking those photos and in a little bit of an old school fashion, framing them and hanging them across the offices for every location. So it's a really great way to showcase the people who were selected for this really prestigious annual award program, and also just to bring a little bit more of the humanity to life around the office. So as people are walking the halls or in conference rooms, they're able to see some of their peers maybe doing something really crazy, like going whitewater rafting or skydiving for the first time, or doing something really special with their family. So it's a way to celebrate those that are part of this prestigious program, but also just really bring those personalities and stories to life around the office. It's also a really great way as people come into the offices to interview, so those future candidates, to really show that leadership cares about the top performers in the organization and gives them a really special way to take time for themselves after doing such a great job at work. So definitely recommend non-digital storytelling in the form of photos or things like that that you can hang around the office as a way to really communicate your values, not only to current employees, but those who do pass through your doors for interviews and things like that. The next question came from Mona at Kava. She's asking about storytelling and would love to learn about how to involve minority groups and how to highlight those. And I know that Molly was speaking a little bit to minority groups just in the last slide or two. So would love to hear from Molly just on how you might go a little bit further on that for Mona's question.
Absolutely. I think this is a great question. And I think so many people who are searching out there for a job right now are looking to see what kinds of commitments a potential employer is making in the diversity and inclusion space. So if your company already has minority groups or affinity groups or employee resource groups, there's a lot of names for pretty much the same thing. I would just recommend making sure that your managers know about these groups and encourage your staff to join them. Without the knowledge that these groups even exist, you'll have a hard time even getting them out there and getting them being part of your brand employer story. Just taking pictures, making sure that there's attendance or at the events or on the boards of these different groups, I think it would go a long way. And if you don't already have affinity groups, I think it would be really cool to, if it's in your budget, to hire a video company from, the inception of thinking about starting an affinity group, and then all the way through the ideation and the process of creating the group to a launching of an event. It could be a really cool way of showcasing that as an employer, you're really committed to diversity and inclusion and being part of those conversations.
And this is Heather, and I think also tagging along to that, I think the extension of those employee groups can reach beyond just the groups themselves. So an example for that is we had a large client that we worked with, and we did a video with their employees about what it means to be an ally. And so we captured those employees within their own environments. And there was a really personal, resonating story with two men holding hands, walking their dog versus someone sitting in a conference room talking about diversity efforts. And so I think you can also go beyond just the kind of typical what you think to exploring why those people chose a career within that organization because of what their place in life is, or because they value diversity and being in one of those groups. And so I think that there are other unique ways to share those stories as well that can really resonate with people.
Yeah, thank you guys. That's awesome. The next question came from Akeem, who's at Boeing. She's looking at a variety of communication sources to share employee testimonials, and she's really curious to hear more about best practices and the types of forums that people are using, again, to share employee testimonials, maybe through video or through social media or through newsletters. So Molly, I know you spoke to newsletters a little bit before, but of all the things that you've kind of had access to, what's been the most successful when you think about, video versus social versus newsletters? Anything you want to expand on?
Yeah, I think that they all can be really effective, just kind of depending on who's looking where. And you kind of have to throw a lot out and see what sticks. But as it relates to a newsletter, we've done in the past where we sort of interview one employee and we kind of see what their trajectory has been at the company and just kind of getting to know a deeper dive of that person. And then, recruiters or hiring managers can send out that newsletter. They can forward it on to whomever, and then they can really, see, oh, this is a day in the life of a QA engineer, or, oh, this is how a product manager really feels about their day-to-day. So it's there's a lot of different ways of doing that, but I do think that they can all be really effective. It just kind of depends on where your candidates are lying.
Very cool. Thank you. Yeah, and then the next question we'll cover before we jump into the live came in from Allison. She's with UC Berkeley, and she was really looking for best practices to build stories to acclimate new hires and to facilitate the onboarding process. So Heather, I know you talked a little bit about onboarding in the beginning. Anything you'd want to add here just on how to acclimate and build excitement for those new people coming to the company?
Sure. So I think one of the key points here is that content, it shouldn't stop after you hire someone. It's probably actually one of the most important times to continue to provide content for retention rates, for employee satisfaction. So I'll give you an example from Muse. So one of the things that we've created for our new hires here is an instructional infographic, which is your first 90 days, which highlights some of the things that we do, our initiatives here. So we have Muse Buddies, which is a Muse coffee buddy that will take you out, that you can ask any question that you want to know about the company and get a sense of culture. And I think that there's a real need for a continuation of that culture content. So a lot of the things that you helped attract those employees, but also the idea that this is a new person navigating a new space. And so they may want instruction, they may want something, a blog post or an infographic that explains to them the questions that they might have or be too afraid to ask their coworkers when they first start. So I would say definitely to focus on a balance between continuing that culture story, but then also providing the instructional content. What are the things that you would have wanted on your first day at work when you didn't know anyone and you might be afraid to ask those questions?
Great. The next, we'll jump into the live Q&A now too. The first one is from Sherry. She's asking about telling a compelling story in sound bites. So any best practices for making content that's really consumable? And is there a value to maybe having content that's short form, like even 5 to 10 seconds, 15 seconds versus something that's much longer, like our traditional video testimonials that we're often used to?
Yeah, so
Heather. Yeah,
this is Heather again. So I think it's really crucial that you capture somebody in the first 3 seconds. And I can't emphasize that enough, because just like when someone meets you, they decide in 3 seconds whether or not they like you. They also decide within 3 seconds whether or not they think your company is interesting or your content is interesting. And so I think one is understanding what medium you're placing content on. But if you are looking for something like Facebook, Insta Stories, Insta TV, things like that. Make sure that whatever you're doing in the first 5 seconds, whether it's long form or short form, is going to grab that person. And I think the other thing is making sure that whatever video you do create is pre-produced. And so one of the things that we do here at the Muse is we do pre-interviews with all of the employees that we are interviewing. But from there, I'm building a loose script of what I've pulled out of those pre-interviews that I want them to say, that are the interesting parts of their story, the line that I want to lead with. I think a lot of people think if you show up at an event with a camera, something good's going to come out of it, but there's a lot of pre-production work that should go into that. And so I think whether you're doing that internally or you're outsourcing to an external team like the Muse, making sure that the brand messaging is clear and you've captivated people within the first 5 seconds. Same thing with blog posts, right? Think of the first lines of famous books. They hook you right away. And so no matter what length, I think making sure that those first 5 seconds jump off the page is really crucial.
Awesome, great feedback. And the next question comes from Kayla. She's asking for any best practices for launching a talent brand hashtag.
I can take this one. This is Molly. I think it would be a cool idea to maybe survey some of your really standout people and just kind of ask them what is most important to them about working there. And then taking that data and then talking with your marketing and with your HR teams. In my role, I have 1 foot in HR, 1 foot in marketing. So it really does help in really talking about this employer branding stuff. So if you have this data from your employees and you can just spitball and find an appropriate employer brand hashtag. This is something we've been working on for a while at Truex too, but just something that we haven't exactly nailed down yet because we want the exact right thing. But I think just asking people and then talking with your marketing team to see what they think is best is a great way to start it.
Totally. And at Blueboard, Heather mentioned earlier, we use hashtag Blueboarding. It's a public hashtag, obviously. And we do lean on that not only to showcase employers or employee stories as they're going out and about. So we do actually offer a photo contest for people who go on Blueboard Awards where one person wins every month with the best photo. So that's a great way to get their stories kind of brewing. But we also use it internally and really tag our own activities, whether it's one of the photos that Heather showed earlier was our team celebrating National Bring Your Pet to Work Day. So that's a really fun way to bring our spirit and mission to life about challenging your comfort zones, trying new things, indulging your passions. We have a lot of passionate pet owners at Blueboard, and we're happy to have a pet-friendly office environment. So we do use that hashtag interchangeably, whether it's for employees who go on the experiences or for our own internal operations and fun activities and celebrations that we're doing at Blueboard. So I think it's okay to also consider having a hashtag that universally speaks to your mission that both consumers as well as your internal teams could leverage. Great. The next question comes from another Morgan. Hi, Morgan. She's saying in the Q&A that incentives are great, but it is hard. She's saying, sorry, but I find people are most driven when they feel the task at hand are valued and making an impact. So what's the balance of making sure that incentives are appropriately marketed, but also communicated in a way to employees that it feels a little bit more authentic and not so focused on the carrot at the end of the incentive? So I'm happy to speak to that one. I do find, obviously, working at a recognition and rewards company that we do value incentives and really having something valuable that people can strive for. But when you're thinking about the two forms of motivation, intrinsic motivation or really having someone internally being driven to do right by the company is incredibly important. So it's all about a balance. And if you want to lean more towards the intrinsic motivation side, we do find that really showing the value that someone's efforts bring to the company. So if you're thinking about employee referrals, for example, which often do have incentives attached, you might not be able to always offer incentives, but if you can really have transparency and leadership's communication around the value that that new hire might bring to the entire company and achieving broader business goals, that might light a fire and inspire employees to take that action without an incentive. So yeah, the more that you can bring value and purpose towards something will help drive intrinsic motivation versus having to always offer a reward at the end. I hope that was helpful, Morgan.
And this is Heather. I'm going to jump in here with an example. Yeah. I think that there's also real value in combining both the incentive and the purpose. I'll give you an example. There was a company that I worked for. One of their big goals was really getting their sales team to get more client meetings. And so one of the incentives that they wanted to provide was, what if we gave them a spending credit in order to kind of upgrade their wardrobe a little, feel confident getting into those client meetings, which was a great big company goal for the company I used to work for. But you could only get the incentive if you gave back a certain amount of your old clothing to Dress for Success and other organizations. So the idea here was focusing on the idea of making an impact, getting people set up for success in those big sales meetings, but then also providing them with an actual dollar incentive. And what the company then did is we had an event where everyone wore their new outfits. We created a hashtag and we did a really fun photo booth of everybody in their new clothes, and we tagged all the pictures and did a blog post on the initiative. And so the idea here is you can think outside the box and think about ways that can kind of help company goals, but also can help kind of those incentive and making an impact goals as well.
Oh, I love that. That's such a good idea. Thank you, Heather.
Of course.
Cool. So 2 additional questions that are kind of similar. Both Candace and Tranel asked about ideas and best practices for acknowledging or kind of bonding together either remote employees in the case of Tranel, or Candace actually has a really large organization where all the employees are spread out. So to kind of compartmentalize those or to bucket those, it seems that it's really a question of building engagement and building brand when your employees are very spread out. So maybe not everybody has those close connections. What are some tips or tools for bringing that to life? Molly, I know you have a few different offices at Truex. Anything that you might want to share on how you kind of bond together your offices?
Yeah, we use our Facebook group to try and get everybody, on the same page and knowing, oh, cool, the New York office is having a sommelier in today, or the LA office is going out for a barbecue. So it's cool to get everybody kind of together digitally via Facebook. But it is also really hard when, everybody's got their own 40 hours, their own job duties, to make sure that everybody feels engaged, which is, again, I'm pointing back to our newsletter. I do reach out to the head of every office and say, hey, what do you have to put in the newsletter this month? Or, our remote employees, do you have any updates, personal, professional, whatever? So you can really try and get them incorporated into your fold, even when you're spread apart. It is a little bit of a challenge when people have been at the company, especially in a larger organization, because we are a part of 21st Century Fox. I know that some of the challenges that are faced over there is that you have a large spreading organization with people who have been at the company for 6 months and people who have been at the company for 25 years. So keeping everybody engaged and what is going to speak to one population isn't going to speak on another. So it's just kind of, putting a strategy behind it and seeing what's going to engage other populations that you might not necessarily feel are broad brush, and you can, everybody is not going to be engaged by one thing, but it's kind of trying to get tactical engagements in each population.
Yeah, Molly, on the note of the engagement surveys that you're running, are you also looking at that data and segmenting by office location when you're thinking about what is most important and what's most valuable to your employees?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's, I think, some of the most telling data is that some people are really, comfortable and feel great. And then for other questions, they're in one specific office, it's a little bit more of a challenge. So we can really sort of divide and conquer and not say that everything is important to everyone, but really moving the needle in tiny directions for each office and seeing what makes a difference to people.
Very cool. All right. The next question came from Callie. She's with Learning Care Group. She was asking for examples of how to really bring storytelling into the job posting process. The job posting is obviously a very outdated tool. It's all copy. It's very long to read. So Heather, maybe you have some feedback on this, but really thinking about how to make the job posting itself a little bit more enticing. And are there any tools that will pair that with other storytelling content, whether that's videos or testimonials or just more color of the office, to make that job posting stand out a little bit more and give it some additional life?
Sure. I think when we think about job descriptions, I think they should not only make a candidate want to work there, but should make them feel like they want to belong there. And so there are small ways to do that. You can, instead of bulleting out skills, you could focus on character traits, like you call yourself a writer first, or tech fascinates you, or something like that. I think, bringing it back to the individual is a real kind of quick, easy win. And then I think there are definitely ways to tell job stories. So we do that at the Muse by having employee testimonials, talking within those departments, where they're able to provide more insight on what that job is about. I think video job descriptions are great if you have the capability to host them, or if you wanted to partner with another company to do that. I think it's a real kind of, again, people remember visually, and so I think that's a really nice way to kind of get that clear picture. We did it with a series of with an enterprise client that we worked with, who we focused on a woman who had left her job at a big tech company to come work at this other company that's not thought of as a tech company. And we did a day in the life, but there was also kind of, again, this sense of belonging, this sense of it being more than just about the day-to-day tasks of her job, but also kind of focusing on the why within that description, why she joined that team, why her role there and the things she is tasked with are important to her and her values and her mission. And so I think it's getting some of that within either your job description or video job descriptions, I think can make a really key difference from other employers.
Very cool, thank you. And we have time for just one more question. Dina wrote in and was commenting on how important it is that we are talking about an employee experience. So thank you, Dina. I'm happy that you're happy that we're covering the topic. She brings up a really good point about just the balance of having all of these really great stories, happy photos of barbecues and raves and whatnot, and how amazing the energy is on the first day. How do you kind of balance like authenticity in that while still controlling the brand? We obviously want to have workplaces that appear to be the best place to work, that show only happy employees, but sometimes it might be important to show all types of stories. And Heather, I thought it was cool how you talked about your own personal story of like being a mom and how that is a challenge in a lot of ways. So any comments just on how you can manage that balance of stories that are authentic and really represent your culture while still kind of showing it as a best place to work?
Yeah, I mean, I think kind of at the very basic level, people see through BS. I mean, like, it when you read it, when it's canned company talking points. And so I think it one starts with the executive team, and I think it starts with getting them a little bit out of their comfort zones. And I think that every company has challenges. Every company has things that they need to overcome. And I think you can still be authentic while positioning it in, we're trying to be better at this, or we're growing that part of our company. Or, a lot of our employees do struggle with this X, Y, and Z thing, and here's how they manage it. And I think it's important to be honest. I think employees will value you more. And I think it speaks more to retention as well, right? It's, our founder likes to use the dating example, right? If you look at somebody's online profile and they look one way, and then you show up at the restaurant and they are a completely different person, they're probably going to ditch the date. And so like retention is the same thing. Let people know what they're getting into in the same regard. If there are areas you're struggling with, don't be afraid to say like, maybe that's not our strongest point, but here are the other reasons why we're growing in this area and what you can benefit from.
I love that. It's so true, just to make sure that you're not only putting like your best brand forward, but like your real brand forward, and to really bring the right candidates into the room. They will appreciate, I think, that authentic look at you, even if it's not always your very, very best day. So it is important to strike a balance and find opportunities to show both sides of what's happening at the company. So very cool. And thank you, Dina, for that great question, really important. So on that note, I think we're going to come to a close. There were a few additional questions that came through, but we will try to reply to those directly to you via email after the event ends. So no question is wasted at all. So just a kind of final reminder of staying in touch. Blueboard and the Muse are both putting on ongoing content regularly. I know for Blueboard, we have a webinar coming up next August that we'll be starting to promote soon. That's all about motivating beyond the paycheck. And we also did promote our new employer branding ebook. If you visit blueboard.com and scroll through midway down the homepage, that might be the easiest way to find it. A really great resource with practical tips for building your employer brand through shareable recognition efforts. And with the Muse, like I mentioned, hot off the press, I think just published today, a brand new ebook that's all about crafting compelling stories. So very timely with the content we talked about today. You can find that at hire.themuse.com. And then follow the rest of the link here. We'll be sure to share those as well after the event and our follow-up. And a few of you did ask about the recording. That will be available by tomorrow, if not sooner. We'll be having the recording as well as a recap that's shared with everybody who attended. So with that, a huge thank you to our hosts and panelists and for everyone who attended. We hope you have a great rest of your day. Thanks for joining.